it's me, Tabatha Mudra, on screen with Mandi, Hawke.
Hello, hello.
And we're going to do my interview, and I didn't know who to ask. Oh, yes, I did. It was the host of the screening on March 28th, which is Mandi.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we've known each other for almost 16 years, so I think it'll be pretty comfortable, very casual. And let's dive in. What do you have for me?
Good fit. So I'd love to just start with if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your involvement in the project.
Involvement in the project. I was involved in Pit Bulls and Piranhas. So initially it was a script that I wrote. And it started by telling some stories and people saying, oh, maybe turn that into a movie. And I was like, that could be fun. And went on that adventure, wrote the script, did a lot of table reads. And then eventually we produced it, but not without plenty of challenges, including COVID-19. And then I also am a cinematographer, so I filmed it as well.
So I remember some of the early reads, PC, and then that really took it to a screeching halt and a whole build back up again. So good job. It's really cool to see us being here now, considering how much of a halt the whole world went to for a while. So can you talk a little bit more about your specific role? I know you said cinematographer, writer, but what did that look like as far as the filming of this part?
Well, going behind the scenes in the producing aspect of it was everything from getting the locations, which took 2 years, to the date of going door to door, going on Google Earth, walking around, trying to find era-specific sites that we could film at, and leaving notes on doors. And it was a literal DIY, make it happen. It was absolutely bonkers. I know every mobile home park from West Palm Beach. Yes. And then from the side of writing it, when you write something so jam-packed, I think because I'm not a seasoned writer, this is the first film I wrote, and I was very nervous. So doing a lot of table reads, getting your peers to read it, make sure that it makes sense. Is the dialogue authentic? Do these characters come off the page? Should we essentially produce this film? Because it's nothing short of a miracle to do that, good, bad, or otherwise. And I just had this feeling that I had to do it. So
you're able to push through all of that. I actually remember you trying to hire folks to look for sites. Well, I forget the term.
Location scouts.
Location scouts, and that was unsuccessful.
Couldn't find anyone to find it. It was because it's such a challenging site to find. It had to be predated 1970s, no upgrades, and film worthy. It had to fit. It had to fit the era, and that's impossible because it's 2024. How do you find something that's predated 1960s, 70s, never been up?
No upgrades, right? That's tough. Can you paint us a picture of what typically happens behind the scenes in your role?
Lots and lots of FaceTimes. So I think in this process, there's the 3 Ds. It was a million details, so many discussions, and a ton of decisions. So every day you're consistently going through this rigmarole of, building your team and getting them on the same page with you, of the look, the feel, knowing everything and everybody's different assets and talents and how they're going to be used on set is very important. So you really reach into everyone's strengths as well.
Talk a little bit about like the behind the scenes of, 'cause I know you did some filming in some pretty tight spaces and at a really hot time. Just like what does like a snapshot of what's happening, not just your role, but kind of in the background of this filming.
I mean, a mobile home is already pretty small, but then you get a camera crew in there, and it's
With
like a
big equipment, I'm assuming.
very large equipment, yes, and bins and boxes and Pelican cases, and you know, you have to have a place for hair and makeup. You have to have a place for video village. You have to have a place for the lenses. Everything has to have a home, and you're going into a space that is like a closet and fitting in the middle of July, well, front of July, and it's hot. And when you're recording, you have to turn the AC off. We have a generator outside. We have a ton of disturbance. That's totally normal, but it's so hot. So a lot of the scenes have very authentic sweat in them. Luckily,
And
it worked.
everyone was perfectly happy the whole time, I'm assuming.
Um, yeah, we were very hydrate forward, like stay hydrated. Let's make this count. And yeah, I mean, there's just so much that goes on behind the scenes, but it looks like a clown car, you know, where there's 8 people in a room that would be otherwise like a bathroom. It's so small, and I love the challenge of filming in tiny spaces because it draws an intimacy that you can't get in a large space. A large space is so expansive. You have all this room and freedom. A small space tells you what you can or can't do. And then you get as creative as you can inside of those restrictions. So out of the box thinking while in the box.
So I imagine there's lots of stuff outside. Your sets of things that you talked about. I can imagine you got all of those in the trailer.
So, well, we did 2 days in the trailer. Yeah. 2 whole days. It was amazing because I think we had at that point 12 crew. That's a lot of people in
that is a lot of people.
Very, very, yeah, it's a tight space. We have photos, we have behind the scenes, we have all that kind of fun stuff. They'll all be linked everywhere. But it was clown car crazy.
That's wild. So what would you say is the part of this process that you're the most proud of?
Most proud of, whenever you, as a creative, whenever you set out to tackle something that is so far out of your comfort zone, and you know it's going to call on you to be a lot of things emotionally and logically, and you're going to run the whole gamut. It's going to be ebb and flow, and just, it's just so much to get to the point where we're at right now, where we'll do our first screening, a work in progress screening, is nothing short of a miracle. There have been so many people, again, all those 3 Ds, details, discussions, and decisions. Just so many of them, and seeing how every person contributed from pre-production, production, and post. That there's no, film. Don't get me wrong, there are your occasional few, but films are made with a team of people that are
huge crew
on the same page with the highest and best involvement for that scene, for that, it's beautiful. So to be here, I'm so proud.
So when you say 12 crew, is that editors too, or just the folks that were there on site?
Yeah, just on set production. So once we're on post, now we have a much larger crew. And then when we were outside, we had extras as well. So we had 5 total casts, and then every element that is needed. And I could list them, but we tried to stay what we call skeleton crew as small as possible. We would have loved to have more people because it brings more production value and it's dynamic. It just couldn't work. It's a mobile home and they were sardined in, like you could put your arm out and touch the other trailer. So you're like, ooh, we were tight. We bonded.
Had to work with what you had. What inspired you or compelled you to work on this project?
This project was a have to. It was so clear to me that I had to do it. And there are certain, I know people can find it in themselves who create, like, you don't know why this energetic flow comes over you. And it's like a possession, a creative possession where you're like, I must do this. And I just had to do it. So why I had to do it was because I hadn't seen this raw, gritty, real life scenarios played out on screen. And I wanted to relate with a life that I had personal experience in that way. I wanted to see myself in that perspective. And so it's cliche to say, in like a legacy building comment, like if one person connects to this film, we've done our job. But it's if one person says, wow, I saw myself there. And it's an empathy building, film. It's going to show you the underbelly of society, of a very specific niche of society that we otherwise turn our cheek to. So in that regard, I felt a sense of responsibility because I have firsthand knowledge in this. And the only story you can tell the truth of is your own.
So there is some of this that's been done already. There are some folks who have attempted to tell a similar story. How is what you're doing different?
So, yeah, in the basic response to that, it would be, I've seen it glamorized. So it is over the top production value. You can tell it's a costume. You can tell it's an accent. You can tell it's procured. And I appreciate that because I'm like, oh, wow, it's represented, but it's trope. It's just like another stereotypical, access to this character type. And if that was their intention, great. I love grit, the rawest, most visceral, uncomfortable, and dirty type of film you can make.
I was going to say, I think some of what's out there is glamorized, yes, but also a bit softened, I think,
Yeah.
from like the reality of what is likely occurred in that scenario.
Yeah. And I would say even in this film, well, some people may disagree with me. I think it's very softened. Because if it were in its truest form, you would feel it, you would smell it, you would be there, and that energetic ick that comes with it, you just can't, because it's still a movie and we know it's a movie.
Right. So talking about sort of the grit and the depth behind the movie, in your opinion, what qualities or actions exemplify someone who is a cycle breaker? Because I know a lot of this film is talking about is really showcasing the cycle of abuse.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, this film goes into a lot of things from mental health considerations, substance abuse, domestic violence, animal cruelty. And we're watching a young person go through her life, and essentially we're seeing if she will break the cycle. So what makes a cycle breaker? This is the unanswered question of all time. So let's brain stew this. There's many theories. I think your identity how you identify with yourself and the world around you. Do you separate that this is my normal, this is my everyday is truth, or can you fantasize a different reality that may propel you into, say you watched a movie and you're like, oh, there's other lives out there, or maybe you had an influence or a mentor or someone who showed you a different way. You may then start to associate a hope. So identity, potentially hope. I don't think without hope and the drive or willingness to be uncomfortable and go towards something that you don't know, so the unknown.
Right.
Yeah, I think there's a prismatic effect to a cycle breaker, because not only do you have to see that it's possible, even though you have no proof that it's possible at all, you have to believe in the impossible or the I'm possible aspects of it. And then I think you probably need quite a few elements of your personality, like drive and motivation, some type of opportunity, whether you're creating it yourself or not, and then your mindset.
I was going to say mindset, you have to believe you deserve it too, I think. Like you have to believe you can achieve it. Which if you don't believe it, even if an opportunity was to present itself, you might not even see it.
And when we look at the duality in mindset, you have a person who says, the world is happening to me. And then you have a person that says, I am happening to the world. So if they're a creator at their base, they can start to manipulate their reality in order to, in essence, of creating their entire new life, whatever that is to cycle break. But I don't think they're necessarily aware, because you can be quite young. I don't know if you're aware that generational trauma and other experiences that lend to that are there. You're just living it. So you define it as normal. Like this is
I think the shift happens in your head first, because especially when you're a kid, you actually cannot escape. There's nowhere for you to go. So the creation of a new reality for yourself begins in your brain before you can actually get out to go do something. But I think it's very interesting that you could have a family of 5 people and only one of the or 5 children rather, all the same upbringing, and only one of them makes the decision, that I am getting out, I'm changing, I'm doing something different, and the rest kind of repeat the same patterns that their family was.
Mm-hmm. That's more common than not, and we're lucky if one makes it out. Right. And then we were talking briefly about, in the role of identity, having an experience that you feel different than, just knowing that there's something different about you. And as you were saying, someone had mentioned that if you're in the LGBTQ plus community, you may at a very young age identify as different and kind of walk the world with that. And I think cycle breakers definitely have to have an identity of, I'm not choosing this. This is
I'm going to do something different than status quo.
Yeah, this is happening, but I know I can shift it. They just might not know exactly how.
And I think that that could be very much the same for someone who maybe was growing up neurodivergent and they're the only one in their family and nobody seems to understand them. That kind of already puts you in a place to be questioning everything around you, which maybe makes questioning everything easier. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Agreed.
Do you have a favorite scene?
A favorite scene?
Or one that really stood out to you?
They all stand out to me because each actor was so, when I saw their self-tapes, which is they get a page or two of the script and then they rehearse it in their homes and then they send it in. These particular 5 actors nailed it in their self-tape, and that's so bizarre to me because they had no notes, they weren't working with anyone, and they understood. They had a little snippet of the background of the character. So
I saw a couple of the self-tapes. They were really good.
it's I think if self-tapes could be awarded, these particular actors, and that's always a scare for a creator, a director, a teammate, is like, if the acting is bad, it could be the best movie ever, but like the writing could be there, the everything, but if the acting is bad, you're like, oh man.
Doesn't matter how good the script is. If the acting is bad, you lost them.
And so I am confident these actors are going to make you uncomfortable, for sure. They nailed it. But let's show a couple scenes. We'll start with Mia Bella, who was age 5 at the time of this taping. So that particular scene is close to me because piranhas are illegal in many, many states. So I was like, what do we do? I tried to get a permit just to film them. And I asked the social media world, and they were like, what about look into pacu? It's their cousin fish, and they look the same, and this and that. So we looked into it, and we contracted a fish handler to bring us the fish just for this scene. And that's a raw scene, so there's no color or editing that's been done to that. It's not quite what you'll see in the film, but it's a snippet of what we filmed. And she thought it was the greatest thing. Mia Bella was like, piranha, piranha. I'm like, it's pacu, but yeah, piranha, yeah. But that was
Can
a
you
huge.
tell us a little bit about what's happening there, or would that give it away?
No, so she goes to feed the piranha because that was her daily dose of connection. She loves those piranhas. And yeah, somewhat drama is ensuing. Right during that scene, we're setting up to go into a flashback. So this is a scene jumper. We jump around from scene to scene. And so as she's barking, we start to hear dogs barking. And then all of a sudden we're in another world. And that's the transitions throughout are a loud bang. We're in another world. Something happens and we enter. It's very, very fun to play with transitions.
That's awesome. Do you have another clip you'd like to show us?
Yeah, I think the amount of intimacy needed for some of these scenes, again, we are in a very small space. But here is Dan and Craig they're getting confronted, and Craig wants Dan to slow down, calm down, catch a breath.
Dan, man, you take it easy. This ain't got nothing to do with you. Hey, man.
So it's a very intimate, sweat swapping moment.
So, but the 2 videos, you have the one on the top and the one on the bottom. The one on the bottom is going to be like the final sort of zoomed in, and the one on the top was sort of like a behind the scenes view. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, there's a behind the scenes documentarian on set to essentially make the making of, because I find that fascinating. And when you're doing such a big project, to have it documented is a dream. If you don't have any, like you said, you know all about social media. You run a company that understands branding social media. And if we don't share that we did it, it never happened.
Yeah, fortunately, that is the case. If you didn't take a picture, sometimes it didn't happen. What about creative challenges? Can you share about some of the biggest creative challenges you faced and how you overcame them?
There were big creative challenges. There were small creative challenges. There was medium, and then every size in between. This is a creative project. So, of course, there were breakdowns, breakthroughs. The locations, as I said, was one of the largest hurdles
Big
that
challenge.
I had ever seen. Making the summer heat work for us. It was very hot. We were very Florida summers, and then the bugs and the sweat and the rain and the this and the that. So that was a huge hurdle. But we're all Florida folks, This is a film mostly made in Broward. The Pacu Piranha, the casting of dogs, getting them trained to do what they're supposed to do in 2 scenes, and communicating what that is before ever meeting the dogs, because the animal handlers have to take on the responsibility of training to do in this particular scene. The dog was to crawl in a limp way, like in a very dull way. And so documenting that and getting that scene correct was so challenging. I wish I could do it all over again. And I wish we had more time and more money and more time. And
but tons you can do with more money, more time.
Yeah, there was literally, when you want something so badly, the universe finds a way to test how badly you want it. So this is a testament to the pride that we will have on our screening day, is that we made it. It's here. And now we can actually, fully have our critique.
So speaking of screening, what emotions do you hope the audience will experience while watching this film?
So I'm up against myself with the emotions of myself based on what I think. I don't know how much to care about the emotional context of the audience. There are certain people, I believe, may be very upset at the material. Again, it's visceral, it's uncomfortable. I hold in places for a long time to edge discomfort. A lot of people are not really into that. Hopefully the niche invite only list that we have, I'm hoping to get a mixed bag of great reviews and I wish I never saw that reviews. Because even with a wish I never saw that review, that might propel someone else who loves that type of film to come see it.
We chatted about this briefly earlier, that if you had seen something that said this was horrible, I wish I'd never seen it, that you would have to see it.
I would have to go.
You're like, I need to know why it's so bad. Okay.
Yeah.
What about some of your biggest fears around showcasing such a visceral and heavy film?
I don't think anyone's going to walk out, but I would be like, oh my gosh, did they just walk out? I've walked out of a film before. And I would be like, wow, that is propelling a very visceral reaction. But again, people are coming to support, so I have to remind myself of that. And
you are giving trigger warnings. I've seen it on social media. It's going to be at the beginning of the film. It was in the invite,
Yes,
right?
viewer advisories everywhere, in the text messages, in the invite link, everywhere I can put them. And then, of course, you and I will both say a few words about the advisory, because all you can put on the film is literal viewer advisory and a couple words. Again, if somebody is not into investigation discovery, does not like the ID channel, if they do not like certain content, and maybe they're more like interested in a dramedy or love story, this is definitely not that. Not even a little bit. It has
Not
all.
their film, not a romance.
I think it's very, to me, it's a love story. From my perspective, it's a true love of storytelling. It's the dynamic of toxicity and how that lives and breeds off of each other. And why certain people stay together even though they're incredibly toxic. So we get to review all of these different cases, and from these offbeat characters, whose moral compass is completely skewed. And that's what I love about it. So it's a love story for me.
Okay. I don't know if I agree with you, but I'm gonna let you have that one. Maybe it's a self-love story, but probably not what someone would be going for a romantic comedy, but love it. What do you hope the film will achieve in its terms of impact for the audience and or maybe society perceptions?
Yeah, so in the world of impact and societal perception, I'm very hopeful that we can deepen an empathy or compassion towards the underbelly, and towards the fact that when someone expresses their story to you that may be similar to this story, that they're coming from that perspective. And I hope none of the people in the room can relate firsthand. You hope that no one has gone through those type of struggles, but the reality is they have, and there's probably more people in that room than I ever knew that
A
have.
lot of folks don't talk about it at all.
So this is that opportunity to engage in conversation, in a healing journey, in seeing yourself or seeing an event or an action or a behavior that you're like, whoa, I know that. And it's so hard to articulate those type of things because it's not common. People, again, don't want to talk about it. So I'm really hoping that that's the expansive understanding, is, again, building empathy and having a dialogue.
So it sounds like you're really hoping that perhaps if there are some people there at the screening who have had experiences like this and are able to see themselves on screen, that it might help encourage them to talk about it, perhaps with some of the people in their lives. And then obviously we know the more we talk about things and maybe even go seek therapy if they haven't for themselves, that it really helps us heal, to be seen and heard and validated and talk about it with those that we care about.
And I just want to say, I feel seen, heard, and validated by many, many of my closest friends, you being one of them. And so I'm having a little love bug moment because it's so true what you're saying. When you reiterate to me an experience I had, and it sounds so comprehensive that you got it, I feel like a sense of calm. It no longer has the power. So we're able to neutralize something that could or build into a larger trigger. Yeah. So absolutely.
So it's I don't have obviously a different background. I also have a trauma background in a different way, but one of the things that has just made such a huge difference for me is just the folks like echoing it back to me, that and being able to be with whatever it is I'm sharing. And I think that one of the things that some of us do better than others, but there's a lot of room for growth in our society as a whole, being able to be with other people's pain. And just like, you don't have to fix it or do anything about it. So just listening to it, like what your childhood was like, because there's nothing we can do to fix it at this point. Like if somebody sees the movie and starts sharing, I guess I kind of hope that folks will hear this too and know that like that person doesn't want you to fix it. Like just wants to know, like the shame goes away when somebody else can just see you without judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm. Aw. Yeah, let's do that. You're you're empathic in that way. And there's, you don't have to have the same background as someone to relate, to listen.
Right.
But I also would like to say it's really nice to check in with someone to see if they can be a space to listen.
Sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's like what sometimes is missing in conversations is we don't want to just assume to tell the story, but rather, oh, I have this story I would love to share if you have space for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or I could really relate to some of the stuff on that was shown, and I'd love to talk a little bit about it with you. What do you think? Or would you be willing to hear me? I love that because we don't. Some people just like or what I was super guilty of forever is I would always just try to fix things when people shared with me. And now I work to check in and say, hey, are you looking to just vent? Do you want to be validated, or would you like advice? And knowing which of those categories that person is really hoping I can meet them at makes a big difference to knowing how I'm going to respond. So yeah, then hopefully that share brings us closer instead of causing conflict. Anything else you want to say on that before I ask the next question?
No, go for it.
What ways do you feel like you've grown as a filmmaker as a result of creating this film?
The personal growth elements. It's funny because I watch my demo reel now, like my older demo reel, and every project you're just getting better. Well, hopefully you're getting better.
Well, yeah.
You don't want to go back, but in the world of writing this film and all the elements of it being a period piece in the 1980s, it having a firearm and the sensitivities and protection and safety around that, it having dogs, fish, a child actor, an intense amount of violence, I was like, wow, all in the first 15 minutes.
Check.
This was on my bucket list of things that I wanted experience doing. And I wasn't getting that experience waiting for an opportunity that showed up that had all those elements. I had to take a big risk and say, are you willing to go out and do this on your own? With the help of a huge team, but
right.
Literally, executively produce this film. So it was a yes. And with many ups and downs and all arounds, you grow your patience. I also, I always say I'm in therapy because I don't really care for the public, and that's people. Because people be peopling, and I don't always know
be people in.
Say or do, and I don't understand them all the time. And I'm just like, tell me how you got to that. And so with that, I feel like in the process of this film, people have been peopling, and I'm like, yeah, I can be with that now. Whereas it used to trigger me, I just allow the people, and I keep it moving.
Yeah.
Whereas before,
that radical acceptance.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yes.
I see you over there. Okay. If you could go back in time, what advice would you give your younger self kind of around this?
Oh man. I think I would say that cliche thing, which is feel the fear and do it anyway. I have been such a risk taker on my own accord, like, because I'm like, if I take the risk on myself, it's on me. It's my responsibility, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And I'll learn those lessons. And the people who come with me will either rise, as all boats rise, or just blame it on me. Like, it's fine. But taking those big risks, run to them. Don't wait, because even though I appreciate when people are much older than I and they're taking their first big risk, I'm like, do it.
Yes.
I just want to take those big risks as soon as you can. Like,
I love that.
Really take the risk on yourself. You have everything to lose and everything to gain. So it's a funny thing because I'm all in. I'm all in on this film. It's just absolutely a holistic view of taking a risk and believing in yourself.
And you really have stayed so consistent to this vision despite every wall that kept coming up to block the process. So that is really, really, just as a friend and community member, very, very proud of you. I'd like to ask you, this like it wasn't on my question list, but sort of your thoughts about how you hope your role might inspire more females in the film industry, because I know that that is a very unbalanced in the gender roles.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we do these interviews, for visibility. That's why we're consistent on making sure those are seats at the table. I want to tell authentic female stories. I want to be a female telling authentic female stories. There's so many great stories out there. I want to tell my own story. I want to help another woman tell hers. And that there's a pain point in that. Many times I'll come up against a teammate, a female teammate, and give an opportunity, and they may say, I'm not quite experienced at that level, but my male counterpart is. And I says, but why would you give that role away if you could essentially level up? And I have those conversations every week. It's not new, it's not old. And the women who show up are so challenged, so moved by how much they could actually do, because you go on set and you know way more than you thought you knew.
We usually do. We
And
usually know way more than we think initially.
they are smashing it and they're doing everything. And I'm like, you see? Like, you just need a little wind beneath your wings. So I would love to be that for any female who's considering filmmaking, who's considering storytelling in general. And we want to be part of that little tick that takes it from 4% cinematographers to 5, 6% directors to 7, and so on and so forth, for every role in front and behind the cameras. We definitely, we're seeking equality. That's it.
Yeah, so all genders, all genders to the front, not just male, or non-binary, trans folks
Everybody.
deserve place in filmmaking too. So I want to end with a fun question. So last question: if you had a magical door that could open to anywhere, where would you want it to lead?
Oh my goodness. My magical door, I have a few. I just want a hallway with tons of magical doors.
This is your interview. You have as many doors as you want. Where do they lead?
So I would love for one to be like a refrigerator door and take me to Meow Wolf, a psychedelic museum.
Yes, me too. I'll join you.
Another one, it would be like to see everybody I've ever loved like just open the door and have just like enveloped with love. And then I would have another door that would take me to my favorite restaurants. And another door and another door. You know, I could just go on. Just I think every door to experience another joy, and the things that light you up in life. I want all those doors.
All the light up in life. Is there anything else you want to share before we wrap this up?
Oh man, what are you looking forward to as host of the WIP screening, the first time it will ever be previewed in front of a live audience?
I am very excited to also, much like you, I'm really curious to see kind of where in the film folks, you know, have like the big reactions. I'm also just so proud to be here with you in this moment, knowing I've kind of been through the process along the way, and you know we've been such a huge part in each other's personal growth journeys, and this big one being on stage. Like you were the first person who helped me get on stage. So here I am again, going to be on stage hosting, which, you know, I'm terrified of, but I do anyway. It's going to be great though. It's going to be a fun time. I'm really excited about mostly the reactions and kind of seeing where that is and just sharing another wonderful win with you.
Absolutely. This is the, you know, the magnum opus, the biggest project I've taken on, like all in. You know, I just can't underline enough the why wait. Why wait to discover, and even if every day you do a little thing towards your dream, hope, goal, whatever that little thing is, just doing a little bit, and it chunks away, you know, just it's here. You know,
yeah, one step.
5 years ago it was on a page, and then we had COVID, went through the casting process, got closed down, you know, every hurdle. And, you know, why not? Why not do your absolute dreams? We have one tiny little life, like let's shine.
Yes. Dr. Wayne Dyer had a quote that don't die with your music still in you. And that was absolutely one of my favorite quotes. And I try to live by that. Like, you got talent, don't let it die inside you.
Absolutely. Well, on that, we'll close out. And again, thank you so much for doing this interview. It's very hard to interview yourself.
Indeed.
So
My pleasure.
okay. Bye-bye.